This is just a thought that I've had many times that I feel like I'd like to express here for a minute. I'll sit on the ground so I can be in the frame. What's really unhealthy today when people talk about feminism and equality is how there's the mindset of like men are trash, the future is female, that type of thing. Not that women don't deserve and need to be bolstered up and celebrated, but when you're trying to support one cause truly in the name of love and equality, which is what people want, then you should be able to do so without putting down another party, because that's not equality. And it's not received well by the men who are like, they want to take over. It's like, that's not what it's about. But it's just very hard. Actually, this is making me think about something that has always bothered me, where a lot of pop songs are like happy and joyous, like I've made it, I do, and like rap songs too, like all my cars and all my chains. But those songs are rarely without like and like fuck the haters, and like there's always like this like so fuck you, you can't tell me nothing. And it's like, why can't people be happy without having to prove it to somebody? What's coming to my mind is the episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie writes a musical and Dee and Mac are like, but whose face are we shoving it in? Like, people genuinely don't get that. It's like, who's it at is what they ask him. And he's like, there's no reason, I just wrote a musical. Of course, we find out later that he wrote it for the waitress. But I think that a good future is like both parties feeling empowered and valuing what people bring to the table for who they are. And obviously women possess really natural gifts, including in most cases better like open communication skills and intuitive understandings of things and talking or processing about emotions, whereas men are more naturally gifted at things of discipline and action and decisiveness. There are truths in that. And I mean, it's like, it goes back to how men and women evolved in biology and natural instincts and that type of thing. Men and women are counterpart energies that are meant to support and guide and help one another on earth harmoniously. And it also, the whole movement of empowering women, while I love it and partake in it, is also doing nothing to address the toxic mindsets that are formed really young for males. And that, more than anything, is what's outdated, is that there's this really strong messaging and conditioning and expectations that get thrust upon boys far too soon and create hardened and calloused men who do resent females for whatever reason. And I think that fighting the patriarchy, blah, 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 changing these systems. It has nothing to do with empowering women. Women are like, I mean, think of ancient Egypt, where the women were regarded as the ultimate, higher than men, because they were the life givers. And when a man reached a certain point of enlightenment, he was allowed to wear the headpiece that resembled long hair to show that he had reached the level that women represent. I mean, women can, play the victim because women are victimized, but in order for women to like embrace their power and be their true whole selves, like radiant and unfuckwithable, they don't need anybody's permission for that, and they don't need anybody else to be put down in order to do that. I think that's just naturally the direction that the world is going in, because like, just going off onto like all the crazy parts of where this goes in terms of its implications, like Gaia, Mother Earth, is just cycling back around to more of a matriarchal season, cosmic season, which is not my idea. That's like prophesized by a lot of different parties. It's not like one person on TikTok said it, this is like ancient cultures foretold this. Excuse me. So that I see as being separate from the fact that there really isn't a whole lot of like reframing the way we nurture and raise boys to treat women well and look up to them. Like it's always wrong when the young girls are like, well, he's mean to you because he likes you. We should teach young boys that it's okay to be kind, and like it's okay to look up to girls. Because obviously girls mature at a different rate than boys when children are growing up, when kids are young. And it's okay to tell the girls to admire things in the boys, but all of it framed from the lens of like, we all have much to learn from one another. Just because somebody isn't as this as you are doesn't mean they're not something else in a different way. I think of Justin Baldoni, who played Raphael on Jane the Virgin, because he wrote a really beautiful book about like raising boys and being a man. I can't think of the title right now, but I think he's like one of the more revolutionary men out there today, who's really open about talking about his own like toxic masculinity, because it's far more common to possess it than not, to be honest, just because of the way that the world works. And a lot of men don't, like, I think, realize that they have toxic masculinity, just like a lot of women don't realize the extent to which they might like harbor resentments against men in the personal life, but also on the macro scale. Like if you look at the world, it's pretty easy to find reasons to resent men, but they were all once children who were probably not taught how to appreciate what women bring to the table before they were 10 years old. Like, I would probably guess that every single male world leader right now would tell you that he probably wasn't, as a kid, taught to look up to the other, the girls around him. And it's different to be a child and have respect for your mother than it is to be a child and know how to connect with girls. That's different. I do think that today, like, young parents who have young kids do think about things very differently than parents used to. But in general, the conversation isn't there. Like the social conversation about nurturing the child before the child becomes the inner child. Because all adults have wounded inner children, things that we weren't ever able to resolve that do affect our adult relationships and ultimately the way we feel about ourselves. But that's not really what we think it is. We just think, well, that's the way I am, or that's who knows, maybe we don't even realize it, but if in most cases, if someone were to, go to therapy and talk about one of these big long-standing issues, even if it's a patternistic issue, so maybe the issue manifests in a bunch of different things, but the root cause really is this one thing that a person really has a hard time changing within themselves that continues to create problems or what have you. What you would most likely discover through talk therapy is that there's a reason that goes back to something that happened when the person was far younger, because I mean, foundational stuff, that's real. And if I were to use one of my diagrams to explain that, I would pull up uno momentito. Oh. I'd pull up this picture because these like lower foundational things, right, say that all of this lower rung, that's like core foundational memories and moments from somebody's youth. This second rung, the next decade of life, the next decade of life, the next decade of life, all of this activity, that's where identity is formed. You know what I mean? This is why a lot of people truly do like peak in high school, or the bonds that we form when we're between the ages of like 8 and 14. Those are typically, you have a better chance of maintaining those friendships long term because they register with you differently, but foundational core memories, you start to like, you add, not that you add less and less to your personality as you get older, but like when you're up here, you have so much less to learn. Down here, you're still learning like, what does it mean to interact with people and be a friend, and how to communicate my needs. I mean, ultimately, a lot of people still learn that throughout the duration of their life. And of course, we're always refining our ways of being in the world. So in order to try to live a better life, whether or not we know it, that's kind of what we're pushing for. Although a lot of people in today's world think that certain things will give them certain feelings when that's not the case. But anyway, our motives, our deep motives, are really just to be like loved and accepted. But for a lot of people, they're not going to say that that's their ultimate goal, because what they're ultimately pursuing is like security and safety through like money, maybe, because that's what we view as like, when I have this, then I'll have that, and then I'll have done it, or what, but it takes a lot of, so if you're here and like, I don't know, I was thinking of these as like generations, but it's just a model, right? It's abstract. It's not literal. But I mean, honestly, I love this diagram. I can't say it enough. I love my little grids and my twists, because I can use it to explain so many things, and that's cool to me. So whatever they are, these could be months of a baby becoming an infant or a toddler, like this could all be the first 5 years of someone's life, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it could be, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 10 to 30, whatever. In order to address, say, this cone, and just to show, within the single one is a fractal. So then there's all these different facets to the foundational core things. This is cool that it's reflecting on the glass. I like that. It's where your eyes were looking when something happened, what you registered visually, what you heard, how it made you feel, what the feelings made you think of, everything, memories, everything's so deeply encoded in the way we recall and internalize things, and therefore act going forward about, how we feel about ourselves. Or if somebody tells you something when you're really young, you might be, shockingly old when you realize that that's not how everybody thinks. I was just talking about this the other evening with my cousin about like, it's interesting the things that we inherit, because some things are talked about like, well, how were you taught to tie your shoes? And then other things are never talked about. We were talking about killing ticks, like that we were taught to do it a certain way, but like it's different. Not one of the most commonly compared, like inherited things. My point is, if you did have something that was continuing to manifest in your life, these repeated problems, everybody has them. I mean, everybody has them. No one's perfect. We all accrue baggage and experiences that harm us that we have to face, that's just life. So if you were to do that with a therapist who would kind of eventually uncover like, well, where did these feelings of inadequacy begin? And you were like, well, I do remember, whatever was said to me and blah, blah, blah. You'd go back to probably, maybe even here, of course, because then you can start a new one and that one can have effects on the other one. But my point is these threads go up the thing. So all the things that happen here are connected down here. And in order to regress to the point of realizing where the first instance is, that's the thread you have to pull, because if you don't, the root cause, right, it's still going to be part of this one, and so it can still work up there. It can still affect, it can still tug these strings that are still actively wound up in this core issue. They can still be pulled on because you didn't unravel them. You only went down far to this one, and that's not where it all began. So in short, go to therapy. Yeah, but here's the cool part too. When you pull on it, you unravel it, like there's a hole that's left, right? And you have to figure out how to knit back together this new, like it's kind of beautiful, because when you go back to the core one, it affects every single one. So this is something that happens all the time to me, right? When you heal from something, no matter when it happened to you, you think about every single thing that has happened since then in a new way, because the strings that were related to the core issue no longer weave through those other experiences. The structure of those memories and experiences has changed because it's not constructed the same. That's what healing has to do with, like changing your DNA and releasing things. Because when you store them, like this energy, say this is like the network of your soul or your Akashic record or whatever, this energy, this is the energy that's powering you, like the fuel for you. And it's what you're breathing in, breathing out, running through your body, right? So when you release it too, you might finally be cured of like this pinched nerve in your back. Who's to say? Who's to say? How we think about things, I'm not going to do that tangent right now, but how you feel about yourself and other people does affect the way your physical body feels. 2,000%, 2,004%. So I think that boys without guidance today, you can't just let a boy go out there on autopilot. You can't just raise a boy without trying to change, right? Because the world, this actually makes me think about work. I was giving a training today, and I talk about that a company either creates how they're perceived or they'll just be perceived, but they don't have control over it. So when you intentionally try to prevent certain core things from evolving, then you're being proactive. If you don't intentionally do anything, then society will do it. Something will still happen. Children are incredibly impressionable. Just because babies can't talk doesn't mean they can't hear. They don't know English, so they don't know what you're saying, but they're very, very intuitive energetically because they just came from the non-physical. They were just there. And they don't maybe consciously remember that when they get older, but all of that energy is what they're starting to absorb, and it's the input that helps catalyze how they start to express and formulate their consciousness as it pertains to their identity as a human now that they've been born. So that was just a little quick hit that I wanted to get out of my system. I feel very lucky. I'll say this too. Feel very lucky to know really like compassionate, good men in friendships and as well as family. And I know that they're out there, and it's like, the not all men, like I get where that's coming from, of course, and it's so understandable why it's so frustrating. But it is true. And those are the people that have to be brave enough to talk about what they don't like in the world and just kind of embrace the fact that it's okay to, I don't know, I don't even need to be saying this, but I do think about it a lot. I do think about it a lot. And I'm considering whether or not I want to share this, but I will. I know that I'm going to have a baby boy one day. I know that because I've met him in my dreams, and they do say that spirit babies will visit you before they're born. So many times it's always the same baby. I know what he looks like, and I know how his energy is. He's going to be an absolute handful, like very, very mischievous and just a beautiful little child, whom I'm obviously going to just adore and try to provide the world for. And it's okay if you think that I'm crazy. This is the purpose of me being able to share my ideas, is that I have to release the idea that anybody, and whatever, maybe the video is not for you, but I'm sure that if you've watched one or two of them, then you've figured that out by now. So I guess I think about it too from a maternal standpoint, because I don't have any children as of right now, but I've just always known that I'm going to be a mother, because I have a really strong maternal bone in my body. And I always have, and you can see that in the way I treat my pets, because they are everything to me, even though they're roughhousing in my storage area right now, and they're probably about to tip some stuff over. Don't do it. I think about how I would raise a boy today, and I think about how I would raise a girl today. Because you have to. I know that I can't speak to parenting as somebody who's not a parent, but I've just been, I even I save different, I have a little folder on my phone of different conscious parenting techniques that I'm that's probably, if that were done for me as a child, that would have had such a tremendous effect on my self-esteem and my self-regulation, my ability to, self-soothe, all those types of things. So it's really beautiful that the world is so toxic and intense, because it yields a consequent mindfulness that parents didn't have. Not that they didn't need to have it, but I think that in the past, a lot of parenting styles were, it was just kind of parenting was parenting, and the kids and whatever. I'm thinking about 2 generations ago from where I'm at, in the world. But now, there's so many different styles of parenting that people feel very passionate about and very against other styles, and the divide, like so many other issues in the world, has gotten very vast. It's a chasm between parties exist, and it's another example of just because those people are doing something differently, is there a way for us to just let that be okay? You can still raise your children however you want to. I think people know this, but I'm actually thinking about conflicts too, violent conflicts in the world. Just because we want to, hi, I love you. How are you? What do you require? Do you need outside? You have to go outside? Duty calls.